Hi, I'm Oliver, age 24.
And I'm Malford.
And this is the Worlds Adrift Show.
This week we sat down with Tom, our audio guy, and asked him some questions about how he's making sounds for Worlds Adrift.
Let's watch that video now.
So I'm Tom Johnson. I'm a sound designer and I'm currently designing sounds for Worlds Adrift.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about the project, the kind of what your sound design for it is, what your kind of things you're doing. Explain that a little bit.
So right now my job is to essentially produce and implement in the audio middleware all of the sounds which will play in the game except the music. So that involves the very standard stuff like footsteps and Foley, such as movement sounds, and the more exciting stuff like explosions and creatures and the ship sounds and the engines and all the collisions and recording all of the emotes for the characters and basically anything you can think of that is making a sound, I'm in charge of it.
So the process of creating a sound for a game.
Yeah.
Is there a kind of a typical example of something you could give of the usual process of creating something?
Well, I always think, what is it made of, and what do I want the player to feel? So, that applies to pretty much anything. If it was a weapon, then I want to think, okay, well, is it a wooden weapon? Is it a metal weapon? Is it a very sci-fi weapon? And what do I want the player to feel when he's using them? Is it flimsy? Is it very, very powerful? Is it something that's going to fall apart quite quickly? Is it something that they put together themselves? It's essentially trying to convey the emotion through the sound. So that's always the big challenge, and always trying to think. So a typical example is an explosion. An explosion sounds like a very standard, basic sound. But I always have to think, well, what is exploding and what is it blowing up? Because if you're blowing up a garden shed, it's going to sound very different to if you're blowing up a car, for example, or if you're blowing up a spaceship, or if you're blowing up, in this particular case, a ship engine or part of a building. So these are some of the details I have to think about, and usually I have to think about them on every level. So that applies also to things like footsteps.
Yeah.
How does the character move? Is he really badass, and does he have very heavy, slow footsteps that make you feel, ooh, that person is not to be messed with? Yeah. Or is it someone who's very agile and very quick on their feet, and that you want to convey this through the footsteps? And you wouldn't have thought that it would provide so much personality, but it does. And you just look at games like Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed does that really well when it comes to Foley. Yeah. You really get a sense of agility from the movement of the character that you're playing.
So is it mostly finding samples and mixing them, or is it creating things from scratch using software, or a combination?
It depends massively. Library sounds are great to a large extent because they've been professionally recorded. They tend to be catalogued quite well, so it's very easy to search for them. But there's always going to be a moment where either the sound is not there, either you want something a little bit more bespoke for your game, which is why footsteps tend to be re-recorded a lot, depending on the budget of the game. Sometimes Foley, sometimes big games have their entire gun libraries recorded in the US or in gun ranges. So it really depends, and then depending on how sci-fi the game is, there might be a certain amount of synthesis as well going on, so using synthesizers. And there's a lot of trial and error. I think it's very rare to just look for one sound and figure it out, and it's also very rare to just say, I need a sound for this, I'll just look for this. You have to try and think outside of the box. That's where the what is it made of aspect that comes in. If you're trying to make, let's say, a drawbridge, for example, you can try and find a drawbridge sound, but there's not that many out there. But you need to think, okay, well, what's in a drawbridge sound? There's some wood creaking, there's some chains, there's some cogs, and try and get that sense. And then think, how big is it? Is it a massive castle? Is that castle evil? Is there someone really evil in there? Is it something really rickety and old and tired that's going to fall apart? This is where it all kind of converges into what I was saying earlier.
Yeah. Are there any specific challenges to sound with Worlds Adrift that aren't in other games, or is it similar?
I think Worlds Adrift is challenging in the sense that it's mixing a number of styles to some extent. I think visually there's something very magical about it. It reminds me a lot of the Studio Ghibli work, Miyazaki, and so that's very magical. But there's also, and that's true in Miyazaki's work as well, there's always a sense of threat.
Yeah.
There's always a latent kind of darkness. So it's finding that right middle ground between magical and grounded, and trying to make sure that you can communicate that things do have weight and actions do have consequences. And that's true, for example, with creatures. You know, the big challenge, especially when creatures which don't exist in the real world, is to try and give them a voice and give them a personality which makes sense and communicates to the player what their purpose is in the game's ecosystem. So that's where the big challenge is trying to find that right tone that makes sure that it gels all of those elements of surrealist and actually fairly grounded and fantasy and, you know, a sense of danger at the same time. I mean, you're on floating islands. You could, you know, gravity is not your friend. I think Worlds Adrift has a hint of loneliness about it, which needs to be conveyed through sound and music as well. I think the music is doing a great job of it. But so it's for me, it's the challenge to try and convey this as well through sound and trying to make sure that it makes sense within the general environment and it makes sense to the player when they get their hands on it. If it's wrong, then people pick it up.
Yeah.
If it's right, then people don't. And it has to be truly exceptional for people to really notice.
Yeah.
It's always a bit of a challenge to try and make sure that we're there and it works, and that it only stands out when it's really exceptional and when we want it to. This is probably globally the biggest challenge in sound design.
Yeah, some of the folks at home will want to know about software.
Software, I use Nuendo here, Nuendo 6, and a ton of plugins. Obviously the Waves plugins, because they're just good to use. I use quite a bit of the Native Instruments stuff. I use also the Fab filters because they're nice to do some good effects. I don't rely on plugins massively though. I think I believe in the right sound personally. I know sound designers who will make amazing things by torturing sounds, and I think that's great, but I like to find the right set of sounds and make them work rather than modifying them too much. I think if I spend more than 10 minutes trying to make something work, it's probably not quite right.
Okay, cool. I think that's all my questions, but there is one more thing that I wanted to do. As a little example for the folks at home about how a sound is created. I was going to ask you if you'd help me create a sound for the horn for developers. It's going to be a screaming man carved out of wood.
Okay.
That developers can place on their ships so that everyone knows that that person coming is a developer.
Okay, that's cool.
So it would be
nice.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think
that's
it's
really
a good
cool.
idea.
Yeah,
that'd be really good. Yeah.
Let's do it. Definitely. Whenever you're ready, don't stand too close to the mic. Yeah, you can. Yeah, go for it.
Do a little bit of a warm up beforehand. Okay.
Cool. Can I get another one, please? And just one more, just because it's fun.
Sure thing.
It's like half speed.
Yeah, good. Wow. This is exactly what I was envisaging. Sounds like it's causing an earthquake. Elegant, though.
Yes, nice and subtle. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe.
Also, check out the subreddit and forum for the latest news on the game and community.
Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.